Day of nostalgia, and our first event today is the Alumni Town Hall with the director. We are very honored to have Professor Debashis Chatterjee with us today. Professor Debashis has taught leadership classes at Harvard University and at the Indian Institutes of Management at Calcutta, Lucknow and Kozhikode for more than 2 decades. He has been awarded the prestigious Fulbright Fellowship twice for pre-doctoral research and post-doctoral research work at the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University. His published works include 18 books, including Karma Sutras, Leading Consciously, with a foreword by Peter for both the books, and Timeless Leadership, that have been translated into several international languages. Recently, he published his debut novel, Krishna the Seventh Sense. He has trained more than 25,000 managers globally in Fortune 100 corporations and over 20,000 school principals and teachers. His recent book, Invisible Arjuna, has emerged as a path-breaking book in recent times. He has served as a leadership coach to political leaders and CEOs of major Indian organizations. He has also served as the Dean of SP Jain School of Global Management in Singapore. He is a pioneer in the field of Asian models in leadership. Professor Chatterjee has also served as the Director of the Indian Institute of Management, Kozhikode, from 2009 to 2014. He has also served as the Director General of IIMK Delhi, India's first corporate sponsors business school, and has served as an independent director on the boards of several multinational and Indian companies. Professor Chatterjee was also the mentor director of IIM Amritsar from June 2018 to July 2019. We are glad to have you here, sir. To be driving the fireside chat today, we are also honored to have Mr. Amit Kulshreshtra with us. He's a graduate from the first batch of IIM Kozhikode in 1999. He has had a distinguished career in banking and finance, starting his career in firms like CRISIL and Reliance Energy. He then joined Yes Bank in 2006, where he rose to head the investment banking division as the executive director. He was the executive director and CEO of Capital India Finance when in 2021, he decided to take the entrepreneurial plunge and start his own firm, Ask Loans. Thank you for joining us today. Could I please invite you to light the lamp and start the ceremony?
Good morning, everyone. It's the first session, and I think all of us had a late night yesterday, so some of you might still be sleepy, but let's see if we can wake you up all with our discussion. So I'll just come directly onto some question which I have thought, and I've actually jotted down. And after this, all of you are also welcome to put forth your queries, questions, and Professor Chatterjee is here to respond to all of them. One request, sir, from my side, some of the questions that I have, I would be asking what is Institute doing and what you are doing, but because this is an alumni gathering and there's also there are some students also, what I would also request to put your thoughts on what alumni or students also should be contributing. So all of these, it's not only one way that we expect Institute to do everything for us, but some of the areas there where we can also kind of take initiative and do things. So that's my request to you. Each of the questions, that also area that you can talk a little. So I'll start with the hottest topic in these days, which is startups and entrepreneurship. Startups is not only the buzzword, that's very much in place. And if you go to engineering campuses, management campuses, startups is everything everyone talking about. And it's something which is taking up a lot of our students and alumni. Everybody is working in various startups at different levels. Some are setting up their own startups. Incidentally, I also, as was mentioned, trying to build a new venture. So that's something which came to my mind first, and that is what I would want sir to talk a little bit about. That what is that institute is doing or we can do to enable some kind of more positive environment for students and alums to kind of look forward to a startup or entrepreneurial journey, and what kind of tools, techniques, skills we can actually inculcate in the students towards that.
Is this working for you? Can you hear me? Yes. All right, so Amit, this morning, first and foremost is that I thought you were in the weekend mode, late night, and so I would go slow on punctuality. So I was hanging on until from 10 until 10:10 to see how many people showed up, and I was getting a brief from the alumni chair sitting here every 5 minutes as to how many seats have been filled. And I recognize that, I'm addressing a startup generation completely. It is not business as usual. I have a sense that starting up is not about technology, nor is it about being savvy about wanting to do something. I think the fundamental foundation of a startup is that you have to be energized to take initiative. So far, you see generations of IIM graduates, and I have been around for as long as you can remember, 30 odd years in the IIM system, 3 decades. The moment you entered the portals of an IIM, let's say 20 years back, the mindset was, okay, life ban gaya hai, life is made. And so I'll get a job anywhere at the end of 2 years, and so don't worry about it. The onus for startup comes when you recognize an economy is moving from consumption to innovation. It is no longer about consumption. The threat that you'll see becoming very prominent in conversations in policy, in government, is that consumers are not essentially, it's a tired bunch of consumers, and their ability to continue to consume in the same manner, looking at sustainability issues in the way that, so if you look at an economy like Japan, for instance, which has been the cusp of a lot of technological revolutions, they are eyeing India in a very different way. So we are startled by the energy that India brings. You might wonder from the lens of a Japanese, I'm giving you a larger context, so my answer will be slightly bigger, broader than the question demands, so that you can see this in context. So I get a sense that why would the Japanese look at India with a degree of curiosity? Because they are seeing that the Indian mind is not caught in what you might call static innovation, which means I innovate. Japanese, the biggest Japanese innovation was the Walkman. They liberated music from a place and took it anywhere. After that, Japanese innovation has been largely incremental, nothing transformational. So they're looking at India with a lot of, contextualizing this in the IIM system, a generation of students that are coming into our system through the CAT exam and all of that, now have multiple options. It's no longer IIM or nothing, right? You have law, you have design, you have multiple options. IIM is one of the options. The reason why I'm in IIM is this: I want to catch the buzz, the excitement of creating something. Not part of my entitlement culture. I want to create something. My father and mother has slogged throughout their lives, doing a job, and I know how boring that life is. I don't want to live that life. I want to live a life of excitement, of some degree of liberation from the tyranny of what you might call more of the same, right? So I think India is on the cusp where like a battery that requires polarities to get started. It requires the experience of a country that has seen it, and also the excitement of bunch of generations that wants to see it for themselves. So they are connected to the world in a very different way. So coming back to the IIM system, we started with the Live Center, which you are aware if you visit this place and you know the kind of startups we have supported. We have supported Amazon for cows, for animals. We are supporting robot exploration, lunar exploration. So we are investing in the kind of startups that looks bizarre on the surface, but you know there's a demand, there's a need for it. And I have started with a center called Live. But I think the energy is catching up in terms of the number of diversity of courses that we have unleashed in the last 4 years. If you look at the number of new programs, you started at a plain vanilla PGP, is now PGP Finance, PGP Liberal Studies, PhD Practice Track, Business Leadership 1-year program, and there'll be a few more coming up in social innovation. Because I've now commissioned 6 centers of excellence, and each center is given a mandate that in 3 years' time, this is like a startup within the faculty community. In 3 years' time, we have to be self-sufficient or we'll close down the center. No more funding. So we've given a modest funding of 10 lakhs each. But you can see Professor Deepak Danledi started a climate lab. Priya Nair and Simi Joy together started a Center of Social Innovation. Center of Governance is headed by a professor from the LSM space. And so you can see depending on faculty, then labor studies and labor relations by Manoranjan Hall. So you can see plethora of faculty based on interests are starting up centers within the faculty community. And each of the centers have the potential to start new courses, a plethora of programs. And so you can see it is not just about starting up as a business initiative by students, it's the startup culture that we are trying to inculcate. And I'm trying to forget that I'm pretty old in the system. I'm just trying to see, so how do I start seeing IIM Kozhikode from the beginner's eye, as I'm beginning a new career, right? And I can see that the way that we will look at startups will not just be one center here and there, not just students taking up roles that are, but also a sea change in the attitude of faculty, of stakeholders, of our board. Our board has now 5 members of the alumni, and 2 of them have started up something or the other. So the board gets enough input as to what the board members themselves are thinking in those lines. And so you can see the culture shift that's happening. We never realized that our USP in this institution was we were very unlike Ahmedabad or Bangalore or Calcutta in our attitude. We still have a bit of an underdog syndrome left in us, and I think the underdog is the best, that energy is the best energy for a startup, because you don't have a culture of entitlement, you don't assume, you don't have chips on your shoulders, you have some degree of humility to go wherever you need to go. You can operate without this lying machine called the ego. And so these are gifts of the Kozhikode campus, the beautiful nature that nurtured you and that allows you to look at reality minus the ego a little bit. And I think these are all part of the combination of forces that is making sure that as an institution, we feel like a startup institution, even if we are 26 years old, right? That is my long answer to your short question.
Next part. What
Yeah.
elements and students should
Right. See, the thing is that we are also sensing, I must caution you that, we are looking at our Triple Crown and our entry into FT rankings, and I saw several alumni did not even respond to emails that would actually give us the mileage required. So and it was pointed out by FT rankings and Times ranking that your students did not respond to questions sent to them. A part of the fault was with the alum office, that they did not probably cross-check whether emails were still valid or not. But a part of it was that students got those mails, but they did not respond. This is not what we would like to see. If you're starting up, you cannot afford to miss any opportunity that comes your way. Every person that you see is even curious about what you have to say is a potential investor. So if you are going to let our institutional processes down by being indifferent, then it's not the culture that we are promoting, right? I must be very, very clear. that this is a flaw that we need to rectify very quickly. Nobody is entitled to anything, including me. I'm as good as my last quarter's performance. My performance is measured by the board every quarter. Please understand this. I have volunteered for it. Every quarter on 18 parameters, director is, and so I do it for my deans as well. Every quarter they are evaluated. So the thing is that we need to have a self-correcting mechanism within our system that says alumni and students who are graduating from the school will take nothing for granted, including our current standing, which is pretty high if you look at our branding, our positioning. Please do not assume that it has come without effort, without sacrifices of generations of people. And this is very important for us to recognize that we have to create our own worth, our own value. Every batch that enters the school has to create something that is their stamp. And this has to seep in through our collective conversation in our communities, wherever you are. Obviously, you are here for some degree of entertainment, enjoyment, but please revisit the fact that, in a relationship, you know who you are, your identity gets clarified. So if somebody says, you're getting bald, or तुम जैसे था पहले 20 साल पहले वैसे ही हो, it's a reflection of how you appear to the other, right? And so I'm sensing that the fundamentals of who we are, and how do we get identified with ourselves as well as our institution at large, will be based on what I've created by way of value. Each person has to ask this question, that what value have I created for my significant other, which includes your institution, before I can claim that value, right? If you have not created any value and still claiming it, you are caught in a culture of entitlement, which is not what we encourage in the system, right? So there are no holy cows here, but there are commitments that we make, that as an institutional alumni, I have a commitment to stand by some of the stated principles. You see, our vision is very clearly put in there in brass, and so you cannot miss it anymore. And so I would like to say that, again, going back to Amit's question, what would be our role as alumni? And you have to define that for yourself. I can't define that for you. However, if you are on the side of contribution, then I think it will be a big thing for your identity, because you'll be remembered by your contribution, not by what you have done for yourself, but what you contributed will be what you'll be remembered by, honestly. And that is what I realized after 3 decades in the IIM system. Long answer, but nevertheless.
That was quite interesting, and I think all of us sitting here and probably who will watch this later on, I'm sure we are recording this, so people can watch on some social media or other later on. They will probably contemplate and see how we can be more involved in the activities of the institute in whichever way we can. So certainly that will. But you mentioned about rankings, and that kind of prompts me to ask the next question. And it's a little more generic, not specifically about our institute. Obviously, our institute is, we have done reasonably well in the last few years in terms of rankings, which is a great achievement, I would say. And ranking is something which prospective students look at, which prospective employer looks at. All alums talk about ranking because it affects their next move also. So it's not just after the campus what job you're getting, that's what, so when we got out or passed out, there was nothing, like hardly people knew about IIM Kozhikode. But even now, we look at rankings, we look at how we are placed, how we are there. That also gives us sense of achievement for us, the older batches, that the institute that we were part of is ranked this or that, it's now at that level. So that certainly rankings are important. But the question I wanted to ask you, sir, is Indian business schools, or I would say top Indian business schools and top global business schools, how do they really compare? Because they have interacted and you have been traveling also a lot, you interact. So from the, I would say, academicians' perspective or from the business leaders' perspective, how do they really see top Indian business schools and top global business schools?
See, the fundamentals of being a top school are the same. Your pursuit is not rankings, your pursuit is excellence. So if you say I'm striving to get a ranking, that would be one mode. The other mode is saying, I'm trying to excel in whatever I do. So you'll see most rankings are based on stakeholder view, but they're also based on if we have a commitment. For instance, if you look at ASSB, the final crown that we are attempting to get, they look at our stated vision and what are we doing to align our processes towards that vision. Our stated vision is globalizing Indian thought. Now it took me 10 years to sink this idea in the heads of people that India would matter, that we would matter in the world stage, and Indian thought is not such a small thing. Indian thought is the ability to kind of take a civilizational set of civilization values that includes people rather than excludes them, that takes them towards, this kind of democracy does not exist anywhere else. And so if you look at how do we take the ethos of India, the moment the Japanese companies became famous worldwide, Japanese ideas became globally accessible. Whether it was quality, whether it was Kaizen, whether it was wabi-sabi, you can see everywhere. Japan is in the idea space of the world. So how do we occupy the idea space? Because as an institution, our primary leadership is thought leadership. We are not product leaders, we are thought leaders. And so our thought leadership will have to be embedded, imprinted in the global mind. So we will have a Satya Nadella or Indra Nui as CEOs, but has Indian ethos or Indian way of thinking, has it percolated the global space, management space? Not yet, not in the way we would like it to. And so this has been our unique mission, and every accrediting body lauded this mission, said this is something extraordinary. And IIM Bangalore's director said, I'm just waiting to see how you create the matrices necessary to evaluate that we have actually globalizing Indian thought. And this has got the imagination of the Prime Minister's office. You cannot imagine the amount of impact that you had. We wrote a book on called 2047, and to send to all the chief ministers of the state and the chief justice of India and all of that. In 2014, all of them responded. 2022, the Prime Minister says that we would like to adopt this as a mission. So 8 ministries were asked to evolve a vision for 2047, and has asked to craft a vision for the education ministry. So I took my 3 deans and some faculty, and we created a vision which is adopted in some ways. So all district magistrates of India have been asked to have a vision for their district for 2047. So what happened here has informed the policy at the national level, and it's not a small thing. The MD of Suzuki came down all the way to give us a project called Next 30 Years of Suzuki Motor Company. So I went to Japan. Some of your students went to Japan. So we're doing a project with faculty and students together to give Suzuki a handbook as to what Suzuki should be doing going forward to remain relevant in the small car segment. And so the thing is that we are doing in our modest way to take this forward. But if you want to figure out how rankings will be affected by such things, it will be in the long run. Our goal is to excel. Our goal is to draw the world to us. Our goal is to be an attractor, a soft power. Management is the most understated soft power of India. And so we want global. I wrote immediately after Suzuki's success, I wrote a letter to Satya Nadella. I said, you're talking about empathy as the basis of your next product line. Why don't you come to campus or give us a project on studying empathy in the corporate world? And I don't know whether he will respond. He has not yet. But it might just happen that we may get a project from Microsoft. So the thing I'm trying to say is that, is it possible to take the core creative insights of faculty, of knowledge creators here, students, and impact thought leadership? The moment you do that, the difference between Indian school and global school changes. So if you look at an Oxford, Harvard, INSEAD today, they define themselves in terms of how their thought has percolated the world stage. What Harvard thinks, corporate America thinks, what Harvard thinks, American president thinks. So Harvard is the pipeline. Oxford is a pipeline for political leadership, thought leadership. And so if we can't be a pipeline for Indian thought leadership, you'll be surprised. The Prime Minister wants to have a meeting with all the chief secretaries of states, and they're looking for a venue where we can host 200 odd people and we can have a suite room. I said, we don't have a suite room, we don't even have a round table space for 200, but we can lend our campus if we are allowed to also get involved in this. So they said, we are prospecting IIM Kozhikode to hold this meeting. So the point is that we have made a mark. But then mark has to be reinforced with continuous evolutionary thought processes. So the subsequent, when I pass on the baton to the next generation of leaders here, they should be able to say, okay, hey, I'm going to do better than the previous director, and I'm going to move this to another stage of excellence. If that is a process we set in motion, we don't need to worry about rankings. We need to worry about rankings only when we are incremental in our growth. See, this year as well as last year, we were ranked ahead of IIM Lucknow and IIM Indore. Who would have thought that? You know, I still have a tenure professorship in IIM Lucknow, and when Times of India call me, say, how does it feel to go ahead of your own institution? And I feel a lot like Kalidas cutting his own tree. But the fact is that these are relative issues. Whether Lucknow goes ahead or we go ahead is relative to what they are doing and what we are doing. If we excel in one or two fields of endeavor, if we say that IIM Kozhikode is world class in this and people come flock to IIM for that, then we have arrived. Doesn't matter it doesn't bother Harvard what rank they get. Sometimes they get rank 4, but everybody knows that rank is dubious, Harvard isn't. The point I'm trying to make is that you should go beyond these rankings, and the only way to do that is to be extraordinary in something. So much so that nobody competes with you on that turf. You got my point. But to be an also ran would be always to be vulnerable. Who will rank you how, and every year we have this scare. We might slip 1 or 2 notches below. It might happen because you do not know if others are doing better than you. You must acknowledge with humility that they are better, or they are doing better under those parameters. But if you are excellent in something, and if you continue to excel, then you are unbeatable. Because nobody has put their thing on that what we are going to excel in. We are going there. I'm not sure we have arrived, but we are getting to that point where we can say that these are 2-3 things why you should come to IIM Kozhikode for. Wherever you are in the world, you should be here. Right? That's our thinking right now.
Related question from what you talked about globalizing Indian thought. And so when the first institution for management education in India started, IIM Ahmedabad, that was started with the help of Harvard. Harvard was the one which helped with the curriculum and all. And we have followed largely management education, management processes, systems in the country have followed Western, I would say American system, not even I would say European or Japanese. It's an American system that we have followed in education for management, philosophy and all. We as an institute, we are taking this different philosophy, globalizing Indian thought, which is trying to look from within, from our own ancient philosophies and see what is relevant, what is applicable, because business was done earlier also before Harvard and all this came into existence. So India was a big business, had a big business community, we used to trade with a lot of countries. So obviously there was something good we were doing. So that's something which I really appreciate, and I would say personally like that we are trying to do something like that. My question is, sir, how receptive are the Indian business leaders, Indian academics, global business leaders, global academics to this kind of initiative? And because it's, as you said, it's not going to happen immediately, it will take 10 years, 20 years for us to establish, but how receptive people are after a few years of effort in this direction, and how do you see it going forward?
Very good question, Amit. And this I've been thinking in those lines for a while. The real challenge is to Indianize Indian thought. Forget globalizing. To convince the guy sitting next to you that Indian thought matters and that we are indeed a country that's worth looking at from inside out. Baffles most Indians. I was addressing 90 top leaders of Suzuki Motor Company. It's a small car, number 5 in Japan, but huge presence now in India. I said, look, I recognize if coming to Japan that Japan is so unlike America. Yet it is trying to go the American way. I mean, it's so unlike America in its design, in aesthetics. If Suzuki could be more of Japan and less of America. And then I quoted a person who I always admired. John Cotter of Harvard wrote a book called Matsushita Leadership, based on Konosuke Matsushita, who was the man behind the Panasonic brand. And I went to Konosuke Matsushita's Leadership, Management and Governance Academy, very close to Osaka. And I went there and I went to his museum and I looked at his biography and all of that. He said something very interesting. He said, if Japan can be national, the word international has the word national in it. If I can be truly national, Japan will be global. What is national? National means that you have the aspiration of 1.4 billion people. Look at the last mile, look at the guy who is driving an auto or hanging out there. If your management education can make a difference to solving any one of his problems, or the plethora of problems that he is beset with every day, you've arrived. Because where else in the world will you get a population base of 1.4 billion with the plethora of problems that comes with interaction of 1.4 billion people with each other through technology and all of that? And how can you solve any of their problems using your management methods? Which simply means then you have to understand this country from bottom up. That's what prompts a C.K. Pradhat to write a book called Fortune at the Bottom of the Pyramid. And every company makes a beeline. Not knowing C.K. Pradhat's ideas comes from India, from his IIM days. Everybody rushes to congratulate Amartya Sen for his Nobel Prize, not knowing that Amartya Sen got the prize because he worked in poverty that he himself saw growing up as a student. So please do understand that the great things of life do not happen because you're trying to ape somebody or imitate somebody. It happens because you're creating something that others haven't created. And the only way to do that is to be true to the context in which you grew up, the soil in which you grew up, and solve the problems of people around here. And I was on CNN yesterday with these wizards in fintech, and I saw their projections of penetration of insurance and banking to be pretty low because they are looking at only a small segment of the population that they are trying to convert into whatever, from physical investment to digital investment and tangible. And their projections were pretty dismal. And I said, look at 2008 number of bank accounts in India, and look at 80% of India is now covered by a bank account. 80% of India has a bank account, which simply means they know how to mobilize their resources, money. And if your projection is that, then you must be very pessimistic about your own country. What Debashis is saying is being said by a lot of people around the world, except in India, we feel continuously pessimistic about who we are, what our identity is. Come on, one political party, one ideology, one way of thinking cannot define India. India will be defined by several generations. This is not just, so you get under this thing that, क्या हमने खुद को पहचान पाया? नहीं पहचान पाया. If you ask me, we have not yet understood how great we can be. So I was asking these Japanese to reflect on what they are seeing in India, which we are not seeing ourselves. I said, we see the kind of mind-boggling innovation that we cannot imagine this in Japan. And the kind of scale of ideas and how they are being created and thought about. This is something. So they are opening. Suzuki has started a Suzuki Foundation in India. 120 crore rupees they have given to Indian government to see if they can help with Indian. So they want to penetrate the rural areas of India to see how India can be helped, changed from inside out. So they are investing. A foundation called JICA in Japan is investing in infrastructure, in roadways. Why are they interested in India? Because they want to capitalize on our purchasing power, which is growing. They know that they have succeeded with Maruti Suzuki. They have a lot of other products. India is a huge market. And India is a place where they can, so they're opening offices in Hyderabad, in Gurgaon. Why would they be interested if there was no potential there? Are we seeing the same potential ourselves? No. Sorry to say no. All right? And so I'm absolutely confident that another 10 to 15 years time, you will see this huge, big, not just unicorns, but big impact organizations, and some of them are bound to come from the IIM, and hopefully one or two big names from IIM Kozhikode. Your day is made. The world should recognize this institute by the name of an alumni who's made it there, right? So this is Satya Nadella's institute. Manipal doesn't stop talking about it. And so we should be able to talk about it. Give us 10 years and I'm absolutely certain you'll hear about your alumni from someone among you, perhaps sitting here, who would have made that kind of an impact, doing something that the world recognizes as exceptional. कोई ताली नहीं बजा रहा है, which means they are engrossed in it.
Can be both the things. Either they are fully
और they are very
into it
cynical.
or they
ये क्या बोल रहा है बैठ के, ये बुढ़ा आदमी है, उसको हटाओ. ये भी हो सकता है. Anyway,
I'm not
no, no,
young
I'm just pulling your leg just to keep you awake. Go ahead.
So, that's very interesting thought that we first have to believe in ourselves. That,
Right.
And a lot of Western leaders have started looking at India in a different light.
Right.
But ourselves we have not yet. And maybe it needs just one major success story out of India, like Sony did for Japan or Panasonic or some of these, that will kind of change the perception completely.
Right.
We still kind of celebrate the success of Indians in the global organization. So maybe one Indian organization which is as big globally will probably do the trick. So hopefully that will happen soon. I move on to a very different topic, which is diversity. And this is something I am sure you would have been asked and people have discussed n number of times. And we are some sort of leader in diversity in one way. I remember my batch, we had just one of my classmates out of the total batch who was of a different gender, woman. But now I understand almost 50% is kind of ratio. The other part of diversity is the stream or discipline the students come from, which so far or in the past it has been dominated by engineering discipline. And even all the celebrated Indian business leader you talk about, they are all engineers, whether Satya Nadella or any of these we talk about. So how do you see this part changing going forward? And how do we play a role as an institute in doing that? Or if there's something we are doing consciously, actively on that direction?
Of course, we are doing this consciously, but I have a take on engineers. No, it's not. I know, but you are not an engineer. You happen to have an engineering degree. You've forgotten all your engineering by now. If I ask you to fix something, you can't. The thing is that talent is not about engineering or otherwise. It's about very talented people. You happen to go to an engineering school because you're good enough to crack an exam and you outclassed others by virtue of your exam taking ability or merit. You are not an engineer by any stage of imagination. None of you are. But you have the capability of cracking an exam and going through. That you have demonstrated. So even the best of engineers can be extremely devoted to liberal studies. They love to read a novel, write creatively. It so happens that the engineers crack even the liberal studies. We had to deliberately keep them away, and it was a wrong move on our part. We are beginning to see that. So the actual dichotomy is not between engineers and non-engineers. Actual dichotomy is between people who have a broad range of views and can think not just in a focused cause and effect way, but also in terms of a out-of-the-box kind of thinking ability. And this exists as much in an engineer as somebody who's decided not to do engineering. But as it so happens that most bright people in India take the engineering exam because they're forced by their peer group or family and they succeed. But doesn't mean that they have become engineers. They have just been successful in doing something and they still retain the sanity beyond engineering to look at the world which cannot be engineered fully, right? It is a world that is not driven by processes or cause-effect relationship. And so fundamentally that is a dichotomy, that is a false dichotomy, engineers versus non-engineers. I will henceforth have no such bars, I'm not going to take non-engineers by name, definitely not. I'm going to map people based on their attitudes, their aspirations, irrespective of what their discipline is. That's one. Two, diversity is an extraordinarily important thing, and I realized that in Motorola, many years back, Carol Roberts, there was this person who was a diversity champion of Motorola, and she had made some Fulbright scholars. I was one of them, going from India to America. And she asked a question, and she asked for a Q&A session. And there was barely enough time for 6 questions. The last time she asked for a question, at least 10 hands went up. He said, I can only take one of the 10, so how will I do that? I said, I will do it on the basis of diversity quotient. So it will have to be a non-American, it will have to be. So I happened to get the lucky draw for the last question. And then I realized that, look, why is she thinking like this? Then I realized that in diversity, Mother Nature's raw material is distributed evenly across whole sets of population. So intelligence is not the prerogative of a handful of educated literate of a certain skin color or people who go to certain kind of schools. Intelligence is very democratically distributed, except that the intelligence can be of varied kinds. It can be physical intelligence, kinesthetic intelligence, cognitive intelligence. It doesn't matter what you call it. But intelligence is distributed very widely, and so diversity makes sense because you are drawing on nature's ability to create something new out of polarities. So the fact that a diverse set of batch of students actually gathering in a place, and then you'll have dinner together. A senior who's from the class of 2001 will talk to class of 2020. You can see it's like 2 poles of a battery, and they can renew each other. The one who's from 2001 can tell the person from 2020, look, this is how the world looked like in my time, and this is what I've learned through my failures and my foibles and my successes, and this is what I'm passing on to you. And you tell me, how do you see them? So we live through the eyes of a new generation. So the reason we have this alumni meet is to see that we have a communion across generations, and that institutions live through generations. They are not living through in a static way. So what you generate, the word generation comes from generating, you create. The confluence of 2 different people in different time scales, when they talk to each other, when they meet each other, they do something to each other. Like the 2 poles of a battery, they recharge each other. And what happens when you go out of this confluence, if it has really been a communion, rather than a samosa and single malt activity, if it is a communion of people, then you will go back from here with a sense of the future that will be very different from what you came here with. This is what happens to me each time I have a session with students, with young people. And this communion means that I am going to see the future through the lens of a person who is looking at. So I was talking to my Japanese guide who is a young woman in her 20s. So I said, how are women treated in Japan? She said, up to school, this is an equal field in Japan. After that, women are very badly treated. This is the unofficial version of Japan I got. I wouldn't have got it from a standard protocol from a Japanese PR officer. I would get it from a generation's mouth. So you get an inside story of what's happening. My own children are so vastly different from me and my wife because they think of the world very, very differently. So this conversation that you have with each other, if you can really get into deep conversations beyond events and stand-up comedy and all of that, which is okay. Nothing wrong in it. I'm inviting some of you for dinner, whole cross-section for dinner, because my room can accommodate about 40, so I can't. There was just a draw of lot kind of thing, except that it was held by the alumni committee. So you are going to meet with each other over dinner for an hour or so. And in that meeting, what you will recognize is that each generation has something new to give to you. Just as the elders have something to give to you, the youngers have something to give to you. Unknown to them, they have a lot of gifts for you, which you do not have. And so the gift of clarity as to where we are going in the future, what matters to them, is very different from what mattered to you and I was security of a job. What matters to them is to see the planet is on the brink of extinction. How the hell do we make the most of whatever is left, and how can we change our gears? My daughter would refuse to go to any hotel I stay in, which gave plastic bottles. She would not enter a Tata hotel as well. And I was shocked. I mean, how can one take a decision so early in life? But they have committed to decisions. They will not do this, they will, I saw a bunch of drunken Japanese kids under a tree in a park, and even while they were drunken, they were removing all the plastic stuff and all the leftovers and putting them diligently back in. And will you do it for your party? We'll have to see what happens after your party is over, right? And so you saw that there's a culture shift happening within our country and elsewhere. I was with a bunch of people on a policy program yesterday. One woman said that I'm from Delhi, in Mysore Palace. We had a get together, and after this, there was a lot of litter, and I was picking up litter and throwing them, and people saw me, and they joined in the security guards and said, "You're from Delhi, you're still so clean." That is the perception of Delhi down south. But in Mysore, he said, I got the help from some of the elder security guys. And see, these are things that are worth looking at. The things that are worth looking at. And so I'm sure as you meet here in this kind of groups, you'll be able to give this gift of a perspective that you bring to this room, to each other, and to, of course, your faculty and the rest of them that you meet. So make these conversations work for you going forward, and you will see this will not be so meaningless as you go back from here.
That was very illuminating. And I fully agree what you said earlier, the stream or the discipline somebody comes from shouldn't be a constraint, I'll put it that way, in any manner. And I'll give you also example from my own batch. One of our batchmate, Vinay Mishra, I'll use the name. He was an English graduate, not a technical person in any aspect. He went on to set up a web analytics firm. He was one of the co-founders way back in 2000, 2001, when people had not even heard of analytics or those kind of things. And they sold it to a big corporation with tons of money then itself. So web analytics you would think is a domain of technical people, but here is an English graduate who kind of with his friends did that successfully and made tons of money. That's a different story.
Look at Amit Airbnb. Yeah. Two design students with a Harvard guy in analytics creates an empire in 8 years which is bigger than American Airlines and Hilton group of hotels. 8 years time. Design students, they have nothing to do with tech, but they hired somebody from tech. And their first customer happened to be an Indian in San Francisco who was looking for a cheap room. So you can see Indian thought has percolated even in product. And so they couldn't find a customer. An Indian guy goes there and said, "I want a cheaper than a hotel room, a bed and breakfast in the morning. My day is made. I don't want to pay 400 USD. If you get me for something for $100 or so, I'm going to go there." So Indian mindset has influenced a whole chain. And I'm not saying that somebody from Nicaragua would behave the same way, but the fact is, it came from actually the first customer was an Indian, all right? Airbnb. Go ahead.
So that brings me to the most important question. That's about placements and employment opportunities. So I've been looking at some of the statistics in the past, and there has been a significant shift in terms of the composition of the companies which are recruiting from campuses. Not only our campus, all campuses.
Right.
Earlier there used to be a plethora of consulting or banking company, and then there were people from the marketing domain, which is HLL and all these, who used to be the biggest recruiters. Now it's changed significantly. And this change also means the kind of skills, competencies, qualities that the recruiters are looking at from students. And not only from the fresh students or the people who are graduating now, for their change switches, because a lot of us change jobs in a few years' time. So prospective recruiters are looking for probably some different qualities, capabilities, skills. So my question, sir, is how do we really facilitate or build or support or create an environment to kind of students to imbibe or develop those skills, qualities? First of all, what are those qualities, skills, competencies that these people are looking, and what is that we can do to kind of develop those?
Wonderful. See, the thing is, post-COVID, I think there's a realization that what technology can do, it must be allowed to do. Most organizations are running on a cost efficiency treadmill. So what can be rationalized by using technology, made cheaper, they would do. A soft beverage company, a soft drink company, has sent cushion chairs in Bangalore to their people, saying you don't have to come to their homes, saying you don't have to come to office, you work from this very comfortable chairs at home. Only when you're needed you will come, right? So you can see the point is that digital, have a digital strategy for the organization. You will now look at efficiencies that you can derive from technological kind of thing, and wherever it is possible you will do it. Some companies are doing the reverse, they are bringing back people. Depending on what you are seeing is the nature of change in contexts is very, very quick. So when the recruiter comes to a campus, they'll say, see, who's this guy who can work remotely, who can look at patterns among the sea of data, who can work with fast changing contexts. So contextual sensitivity becomes a very important skill set or a competency. So you say, well, I would be a leader, but leader in what context? Can you define the context in which you're going to thrive? And if the context was not this, it was that, how would you change the dynamics of, so a skill set that is not based on a certain, standardized version of how an organization is run. Because there are now multiple ways of running an organization. This digitization has made sure. If you look at our fastest growing segment in IIM Kozhikode is our executive education. And I just cross-checked with a bunch of schools in Dubai. I'm going to go and speak in a CEO CXO forum in Dubai on the 12th. So I was figuring out what the business schools in Dubai are facing. They're saying the same thing. Quality of PGP is coming down, quality of executive education going up because of the experience that they bring, contextual capability that they bring. So they're saying, what do we do to enhance the nature of the PGP entry? Because they don't have the value of the kind of experience that, post-experience is very different from pre-experience. But at the same time, the pre-experienced kids have an open slate. They have what you call the beginner's mind. They are not trained in a particular way, so their learning curve should be up. So we are dealing with those kind of paradoxes in terms of generational. So if you ask me what a corporate is looking for today, in short, if I was recruiting on behalf of a corporation, I would say that your agility, in fact, rather than ability to learn in different cultural, technological, physical contexts will be the number one skill going forward. So your learning curve, they will look at your learning curve, not just your academic credentials. Because earning curve will be commensurate, will have a relationship with learning curve. So how can you figure out what has been the learning curve? When I was placement chair, way back in Lucknow, I used to see companies that would come and they look for the startup people. And they say, not from Tata Steel, not from Telco, only from TCS. Why TCS and why not Telco? They've got a far better talent in that. He said, because their learning curve has been very different in Tata Steel. They've done more of the same for a long time. We don't want that kind of growth. And so you can see corporates will be thinking likewise. Before you came to IIMK, what did you do? While you were in IIMK, what kind of projects did you take up? Okay, while you go out, what kind of thing would you like to do? So they're going to map you against what is your adaptability to very fast changing corporate context. How good you are with remote working. How can you bring together a bunch of people who are unknown to each other across continents and still move on? Are you adept in this? Can you speak the language of technology in a way that makes sense to them? So these are some of the stuff that we are hoping that our students will get exposed to, because our courses that have come up in the last 1 or 2 years on analytics and machine learning, fintech, you'll see all of them are moving in that direction. And I think our faculty are very promptly responding to what the corporates want there. But more importantly, how the world is shifting around them, right?
Interesting thoughts. In fact, COVID has changed the way businesses function significantly.
Right.
And I know of a lot of large corporations, they are now thinking of economizing on the real estate costs by having part of their workforce actually working from home and only coming to office when needed. So that's another cost efficiency measures people are adopting too. Now my last question is a bit generic. What are the new initiatives that you are thinking for for the institutes and where we alums can play some part. So it's from that perspective.
Well, finding a successor beyond me, that's my first initiative. I want the baton to be held by somebody smarter, younger, healthier in terms of taking this institution forward. And for that, of course, I've informed my board that we should look at succession very seriously because we suffered a lack of succession issues in the just years before. And so that is my first. The other initiative that I would want to take is in terms of quality of research and internationalization of this campus. You know, you can see me visibly on LinkedIn or wherever, that I'm traveling quite a bit because I want to create connects with a host of international partners who would be present in campus going forward. Because internationalization is very critical. Unless you know a particular culture, even if you work with them remotely, you'll not understand nuances if you've not gone there, if you've not seen it. So internationalization is critical, which means more people coming in from outside of Indian geographical boundaries, more people going out. We have declared 50 supernumerary seats for international students in the PGP program. We have just started scratching the surface, but by the time you have your third or fourth from now alumni meeting, you will see more foreign students. Some will be sitting here, right here. And so we are going there. Internationalization is our core initiative. We are going to go hammer and tongs towards that. Our triple crown, which should come to us by 2023 end at the most. I've already got you the double crown, and I promised the triple crown during my tenure. Now it takes about 3 years to 4 years for the process to be over. It's a process-driven thing. And we are wrapped in the process. We'll have our triple crown, so which you'll be equal to any school in the world in terms of global accreditation, any school in the world. So you'll be ranked frequently in FT, Financial Times ranking, QS ranking. We're already there in QS ranking, world rankings. And so you'll see it'll be easier for us to get people out of our country, and that's one. And the research quality has to be more, we will be measured by our thought leadership, as I said. So the quality of research that comes out of our PhD students, our faculty, and any student that wants to do and publish globally, we have our benchmarks cut out. We have our incentive systems that are structured around quality research. We have a Satish Krishnan here who does 3 FT50. FT50 is like Olympic gold medal, right? In 1 year, in different subjects. So we have that kind of a performer within our system. We are nurturing good researchers. We are recruiting people for research capability. When I came in, there was 17 faculty. Now there is 103, including me, right? And very prolific, some of them prolific research capability. And I can see everything points towards these two dimensions, internationalization. If you go to MDC, you will see at least 30 countries. This week itself, I'm hosting people from over 35 different countries who would come here, mid-career bureaucrats, including personal secretary to the Prime Minister of a country. And so you'll see them all here. We have connected with the External Affairs Ministry. We had the Joint Secretary who would actually come and address students on global literacy, how India and diplomacy will work in the world going forward, exposing them to multiple facets of what you might call a global mindset. So these are some of the changes we are aspiring for. I hope we succeed. There's no dearth of effort. Success is not in our hands, but we are trying our best, as you can see.
Now is the time for any of you who would want to ask some questions. Please raise your hands there.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Shiv Kumar. Shall I stand?
No, you can sit down. I can see you clearly, no problem.
Perfect.
Shiv, go ahead.
Yeah, wonderful session, and I think your each word have created a thought process, at least personally I can say about me. A quick question, definitely I think it cannot go from one way that institute can keep working and possibly we do not come forward to help you. So maybe I think I can definitely pledge my certain hours which can go for IIM Kozhikode every year. So my question is towards what are the few things that you want from the alum side, and definitely some of us are here, and we can come forward, we can be more active. Definitely I see that we are using less technology to be in connection with each other. So lately, like, I definitely look at the Harvard Alumni app, right? It is so interesting that, I was traveling from Pune to here with connecting flights, and I spent my more than 5 hours on that app going through whatever has happened in the campus in Harvard, right? So I think I don't see such platform for Kozhikode, and definitely I think the question remains there that what do you want from our side, which possibly we can pledge, and I'm pretty confident that many of the alums are here not just to meet friends, but they want to see how the institute is growing and how they can come forward to collaborate with each other. So here's some of the thought process around that. One is that bringing the technology. The second is that the contribution that you want. So you may share some lights. And fantastic listening to you, and it has been a lot of learning. I would have missed the session, but yeah, while running, I thought it's okay. I can spend some time here. So thank you so much for all the insights. Yeah.
Well, thank you. The technology has two aspects. One, it connects, it also isolates. I was in Seattle and I met an alumnus from the PGP and then another one from the EPGP. They were in the same city for more than 6 years. They never met because they wouldn't have time to meet each other, except when we went to a Japanese restaurant in Seattle and we met, and it was such an extraordinary energy. Similarly in Singapore, people don't often meet each other because fundamental flaw is a belief system that we can thrive in isolation. You don't. Nobody thrives in isolation. To live is to relate, and if you do not know how to relate, you have not lived fully. Because what relationships do is it enlivens a part of you that has not been enlivened. When a son is born or a daughter is born, you celebrate your children's birthday. What you don't realize that it is not the son or the daughter that is born. It is the father that is born, or the mother that is born. Because the birth is psychological. Physical birth is a combination of elements. But the psychological birth of a parent. So if you give birth to an idea that you want to now incubate on behalf of, let's say, institution. I want to get 5-10 alumni in my city together to clean up a park or to take up a monument that is sort of crumbling, and I would like to do this as a service to the community. So I have to start calling people, relating to them, and in that you will see what you liberate is a part of your potential that you never thought you had. When I migrated from being a professor to a director, the migration was psychological in terms of, and as a professor you could sit in one room, close the door in front and write some papers, hardly meet people. But as a director you had to talk and look at a plumber, look at a political leader who wouldn't speak English language, so you have to break him, understand where he is coming from. So all these relationships energize a part of you that was lying dormant within you. Now you have to step out of your comfort zones. In Singapore I met one of your alumni who's made it pretty big. And I said, "Ab kya? You made your billion. By the time you are 35, you made your billion. Ab kya?" There is a hollowness to that answer. The rings very hollow. The answer is, "Mujhe pata nahi hai." No. The thing is that solo journey towards a linear view of success is going to deplete you in the long run. Let me assure you that. You are doing it at the cost of multiple relations, including your own family, if you're following a linear path. Most people don't recognize that. See, your spouse will have another passion and will not have time for you when you come back home and say, "Well, now I have to reinvent my relationship with my family." It never happens that way. Right? So I asked Ronald, who we met, member of the board of governors. I said, "Ronald, how about this alumni meet? He's organizing my Dubai meet." He said, "Sir, I promised to my wife that how many weekends I can get away with since I'm on the board. 3 weekends to gaya Saturday board meeting." And so the great question is that you have to commit to relationships. That is the secret sauce. Technology to baad mein aata hai. First you commit that I'm going to connect with X number of people in the course of this because we have a shared aspiration. For the institution, we would like to do this. Or 5 आदमी जब मिलता है and they discuss with each other, and a group of 5 is an ideal group. You can meet physically, you can meet virtually, doesn't matter how often you do. And if you collectively want to do something together, that goes way beyond your linear journey, you will be able to make an impact. You'll be able to make an impact. I went to the first Starbucks store in Seattle. That was started by academics, by the way. Professors who had no idea about how to, they loved coffee. Coffee was their passion. हमने शुरू किया. And then, Schultz and all came in as professionals, and then they take to the company to another plane of reference. But that's another issue. It's a question of how do you relate. Technology is not the issue. You can create 100 apps, but what will happen to these apps will be their basic. Apps don't create. People create. Apps only fortify, simplify, bridge distances, but fundamentally it's people who create. So if you have this creative instinct in you that says, okay, I have to create something new, both ho gaya hai. So get hold of 5 people in your community and say, what are we connected by way of a shared aspiration, and can we create something together? Because it's not alone you will be burned out. So you're asking me, what am I going to do next? I'm going to go to my next lit fest, and I'll connect some lit guys and say, okay, how can we enhance management education by writing in a way that management has not been written before, stuff like that. So I would like to create this, but I will co-create. I can't create alone. I will co-create. I'll find people with similar aspiration, and I'll connect with them and say, okay, let's meet until we decide on a course of action, and then apps can help. Harvard MIT में जो discussion होता है, इस किस्म का discussion होता है. Hey, we want to start a company. Don't tell anyone because tomorrow we'll register it. That kind of conversation happens. But here hardly, that sense of urgency is missing very clearly. We don't recognize that our life is running out very quickly in a linear path. And the only way we can make a difference is through relationships. Something that will go beyond me. Something that will survive beyond me. Infosys कैसे शुरू हुआ? 5 people came together. Some were trying to get out. Narayanan stuck. And then you see, it's about 5 friends who were trying to create. They had no idea of the magnitude of what they would end up creating. It was not about apps. It was about our aspirations, right? So that's how it will go. And thank you for asking that question.
I just want to add one comment here. So let's say if I open up my 10 hours that IIM Kozhikode can engage me and the students can get benefit, and when I say I means many of the alums here, so how do they know that, okay, I can take the advantage? I can tell you from yesterday's workshop, I heard from a professor that, I'm fed up of teaching the HBS cases, I want to write in India. I'm pretty sure we are some of the alums at a very influential positions. How many mail has come up from the institution that I'm interested to expand in this area, and possibly either you help or help me with an introduction? I don't see any communication, right? So
why didn't you start? When you don't see something, start.
I'm perfectly open. That's what this is an open arm proposal. And I think you said it rightly. It's first your inner call. It can't happen with the technology. But I meant if there is something which is communication makes easier, and let's say if I open there that okay, my 15 hours in a year.
You tell me who is technologically more savvy? A clerk who is appointed by the institute as a senior research associate with 20,000 rupees salary, or somebody who has already worked in the corporate world, knows several labs, who's more capable of creating that? An institutional administrative infrastructure which is fairly mediocre, or someone like you sitting in a city with high profile. Where should the initiative come from?
So I think we are open for that.
No, being open is not enough, sir. Being open, I'm open. Come, so let fortune hit me. Fortune will not hit me. I'm open to taking the initiative to make this happen. I was open to things happening in Kozhikode. Nothing happened. Until I said this will have to happen and I would have to co-create. I didn't do it alone. I said it has to happen. We will be globalizing Indian thought. And we thought it was a crazy idea, 2009, when I first articulated the vision. And I said, well, I have to take some initiatives. So I started sending my staff to Singapore. My faculty started going to Harvard, mid-career things. And we got the BCGs and McKinseys. You know, DJG Irani, who just passed away. I cooked my wife and I cooked breakfast for him and his wife, Daisy Irani. So the task could recruit. No. You can say, I'm open to Tata is coming and I'm hoping Tatas will come. They will not come unless I take that extra mile. So you have to energize some faculty, or someone in charge. मैं help करूँगा ये अपने करो so that continuously we can have conversations with some professors and we will create this together.
Perfect. Yeah, I think this is the second one that what you want from our side. So thank you so much. I'll just hand you to the
If I can add a little bit, couple of things. One, what Sir talked about meeting, talking to people, and here I'll give a very small example. Somebody I know, he has kind of made a rule for himself that any city he travels, he'll meet 5 people whom he hasn't met for a long time, and every day he calls 2 people who he hasn't spoken for a long time. It's a very simple rule, but that way he's kind of building his own network, he's keeping his network alive, meeting people, knowing, getting a lot of thoughts and kind of thing. I found that very interesting idea. So it's a self-made rule he has made, nothing commercial. So that's very interesting. The other part which you talked about technology, certainly if I can speak on behalf of the Alumni Association, which I'm also part of, it's an interesting idea. Let's see if we can do something about that. We have to do a lot of work on that, and if we can facilitate more interaction between faculty, students and alumni and see what activity we can take it up, definitely that's something, an area where we should work on.
So there are 4 or 5 alumni on your board. The apex decision making of the body. So you talk to, Sandeep is sitting here, right here. You talk to him if you want a board decision to be taken. Right? And so the fundamentals of what you might want to get accomplished is a function not of precedence but of initiative. You know, you're looking for precedence, there will be none. If you're looking for initiative, there can be plethora based on who's initiating. If you're the initiator, then you have to look at the wherewithals of how to get the process going. If you ask a Sam Pitroda, how did he become so influential? He's the man behind India's telecom revolution. He said, every city I went to in the world, I would meet people who are different from my kind. So if there was in London, there was a film festival going on, I'd rather meet Shabana Azmi and Shekhar Kapoor than hang out in a telecom conference. Why? Because my surface area of my connectivity increases. He said, when I had a heart attack in New York, I don't know who took me to the hospital, who paid for insurance, who did the surgery. Because my friend's network is such that any city I go to, I can convene and 100 people will show up for dinner. And so that was the nature of his connectivity index. The question is, how do you reinforce the relationship through periodic conversation which is agenda free? You don't start a conversation with an agenda. You start a conversation because you value the other person. When that kind of communication happens, deeper bonds get created. So you are simply saying, I want to raise some money for this, which paisa do. I mean, if you start that conversation that way, no money will come. And if it comes, it will come grudgingly. But if you start something with a deep aspiration, money will follow. I don't think we are looking at financial crunch. You know, when I came here, we were going to the red financially. One of the finance professors sitting here was in a committee that said that we're going down to the red. He's right now nodding his head. Now we are about 550 crores in corpus. There's a board member sitting here who's smiling, and it is true. And so the point I'm trying to make is that money is a function of how you are energized internally. Now I learned it long back from T. Hawk. Human money is nothing but human energy impulse that can be alphanumerically coded on a plastic card or a currency note, provided there are 2 things behind the transmission process. One is value, the other is trust. So you build trust in your community of 5. there will be flow of funds will not be an issue. I just asked for 5 crores from Suzuki Foundation. He said, you know, we have 2 very influential people from Indian government who are heading this. I said, who are these 2 influential people? He said, R.C. Bhargav Maruti, chairman, and Nipendra Mishra, a former cabinet secretary to the Prime Minister of India. I said, मैं दोनों को जानता हूँ. आप कैसे जानते हैं? We can't even get access. MD of Suzuki can't get the access to them. I said, मैं इसीलिए जानता हूँ because I have met them in person. With R.C. Bhargava, I was in a committee and I treated him. I went to his Maruti thing. I had lunch with him. And Nipendra Mishra, I know him. So I wrote to Nipendra Mishra that we need 5 crores for a program for school principals, and I'm very good. Can you ask Suzuki Foundation to give? I know that you are a member of that board. He said, please write to R.C. Bhargava, who is an 86-year-old bureaucrat, IS officer, who is still, God knows when he will get out of Maruti, but he's around. So I wrote a letter to R.C. Bhargava saying, Nipendra Mishra has told me to write to you, and I copied it to Suzuki Foundation Japan, saying that I'm Saito. I said, Saito, I've written to both these people. The thing is, how would I know them? How would I know them? Because I have taken the trouble of finding out who they are, connecting with them in another incarnation. And now they are the ones who are running. So when your people, when you cultivated those relationships and people who you cultivate have grown in stature, in wherever, you have those relationships that fundamentally matter. Please don't underestimate the value of this. It's not about technology. It's certainly not about technology, which is an enabler at the most. It's about knowing how to use the technology for a purpose that is bigger than your own personal career goals. If that is something that you can do, all the questions that are arising in your mind as to how to establish better connectivity with the faculty, all the solutions will come in quick time because there's enough talent in the room to tell you what kind of app you would have, what kind of technology. I mean, that is very widely available in this very room, right? And so you can figure that out. You have 2 hands here. Yeah, just take a couple of hands, take these 2 and then we get it. Very quickly, please.
Good morning, Professor.
Morning.
And thank you. I have seen you at Calicut when you inaugurated the marathon, long time back.
Yes.
When you just joined initially, I also saw you at IIM Lucknow when you were there. So thank you so much. But I would like to say I have 2 questions. One is on a very relevant leadership academic part of it. Right now we are in a situation where remote work from home or from anywhere and hybrid kinds of modes are there. What's the kind of leadership which is required in a work from home or work from remote and for hybrid organizations? That's one question.
Yeah. Quickly, because there are 2 more hands.
Yeah, the second question.
Yeah.
Recently there's this concept brought by UGC, professors of practice.
Right.
What's IIM's view on that?
Good. I'll take the second question first. We have already appointed 2 professors of practice in Kochi campus. One is a PhD from IIM Ahmedabad, the other is a PhD from Bangalore. You might wonder, if they are professors of practice, why is a PhD necessary? PhD is a hook to get into the academic world because academics will reject anybody who doesn't have a PhD. But having had a PhD, they've had rich corporate experience. So that's the reason why we recruited them. Already we have done it. We have looked at the practice way before UGC made it internal. UGC is only following us, including liberal studies, interdisciplinarity and all of that. So that answers your second question. Your first question, what kind of leadership would you have? We'll require a more responsive leadership. That which the world of computation and digital, artificial intelligence, cloud, will not be able to do. What is that component in the human capability stream? Human beings have 4 dimensions: rationality, emotional responsiveness, willpower, ingenuity. Now, if you map your carbon brain with a silicon brain, which is your computer, you'll realize the silicon brain has rationality. It can take away your cognitive load very quickly. It does not have so much of emotional capability. Its willpower is determined by what you program it for, and its ingenuity is questionable, dubious. So the dimension in which you can excel is your emotional response to things, is in your ingenuity. These are the two aspects that will be part of our education going forward. That which robots cannot do, that which you have to do. And so these are going to be the recipe for leadership education. I hope I have answered your question.
Thank you so much.
We'll take one more and then I think time for awards. Yes, one or two. There's a lady for the first time and the gentleman in white coat. And so, please go ahead, ma'am.
So, my name is Liz Thomas and I'm also an alumni committee member. And
Right.
I was actually listening to Shiv who was talking.
Right.
And I also heard from you.
Right.
And I had the opportunity to meet you in Kochi also.
Right.
So my question is, I don't have a question, but I just have a response.
Right.
So my favorite book is actually Alchemist, and there's a quote: if you want something, the universe conspires to actually make it happen.
Right.
So interestingly, my company, I have the co-director here. We
Okay.
were supposed to meet you later.
Right.
We launched an alumni app 2 days back,
Great.
and we ourselves can pledge the alumni app free of cost to the alumni of IIMK right now. And we are actually moving to the second phase of enhancement.
Okay.
Some of the faculty has actually seen it,
Right.
and they have liked it also, but it should have been formally presented to you before we could announce it.
Okay.
So,
It doesn't have to be me announcing it. It can be anybody announcing it.
yeah.
So,
So as you said,
I'm so happy that you've given me the honor, but
Yeah.
anybody who's, maybe the Amit or Sanjeev sitting there, the veterans can announce it. I mean, it's your, you have to understand that I play a role. Until you will see the board for directors, the scroll board, it doesn't have my name. I've also removed the name of all other directors. We're just playing a role. I'm as much part of the institution as anybody else is. Even when I'm gone, I will be present here in my work. I'll be present here as somebody who had been here, who lived here, who breathed here. So my contribution will remain. And there is no standard status quo thing that only the directors announce it. If you give me the privilege, I'll be very happy. But if anybody else can do this on my behalf, I mean, so be it. It's your initiative, right? Let's honor that. And thank you for making it happen. Anything else?
so I also wanted to pledge my hours. We are technology enabler, as you said. Okay.
Right.
So I can actually help out the faculty here to actually get better course contents, which we were talking yesterday.
Great.
So we just wanted to actually mention that this is what we ourselves can contribute. We can bring others. We can bring also industry.
Right.
Enablers. Just say the word. That's it.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate your contribution. Yes, sir.
Yeah, hi, this is Anand. I hope I will not be penalized for not asking a question. The stage is open for questions. I want to state something like what's listed. And interestingly, sorry about the long introduction. Interestingly, this thought is triggered by what Gentleman Shiva asked as well as what you answered, and a bit of aligned with what Liz mentioned as well. As you said, you being open isn't enough. Someone has to come forward. So, like you said, I personally would like to state that I would like to come forward and take that initiative of probably starting with creating a WhatsApp group to start, and I'll also make sure that I talk to the respective so-called admin people, to understand what they have in mind and what are their expectations, and how we can collaborate and make things happen.
Right.
Yeah, and then as adding on to what Liz said, because they also have created an app, so that would also enable a bit more on what I'm planning to do. I'm sure once I start, there'll be a bit bigger and better leaders coming in and making this to a bit better stage.
Right.
And also, as you said about Infosys, I really believe that I don't know the magnitude of what that I'm gonna do now. Thank you.
Thank you for saying this. I'm very grateful that we met this morning. This evening, 40 of you will be in my home for dinner. Those who I have not been able to invite because of space constraint, I'm just telling you that I'm doing an experiment at home to get you together. You might continue with the experiment, get a whole cross section of alumni in any city that you want to convene. lunch can be or dinner can be paid for by individuals, or it could be sponsored by somebody if he's capable or she's capable of sponsoring it. But do have these meetings, groups of 5 at least, across the spectrum, so that you can reinforce each other's capabilities. This would be my plea. We live in those relationships, we don't live alone. Like Ratan Tata famously quoted some other person, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, 2047 is the goal, go together. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Chatterjee, for sharing your deep and compelling thoughts on what the vision for IIMK going forward is and how we all as stakeholders can contribute to this vision. And thank you, Mr. Kulshreshtra, as well, for moderating it so well and adding your incisive experiences through your lived journeys. We will now be moving on to the most exciting part of today, which is the distinguished